Hello, everyone. I'm Harvey Brownstone, and today's guest is one of America's most popular jazz singers whose extraordinary three-octave vocal range, unique phrasing, and ebullient singing style make every song she sings truly her own and very memorable. With her sultry contralto voice, she sings everything from swinging, straightforward jazz and blues to sensual, rhythmic Latin jazz with effortless agility. She's recorded 6 albums entitled Come Fly With Me, Feel the Magic, Weaver of Dreams, Poetry of Love, Musa Nova, and her latest album, The Way They Make Me Feel, beautifully produced by the brilliant George Klabin of Resonance Records, who selected some classic songs by Michel Legrand, Henry Mancini, and Johnny Mandel. It's been said by more than one music critic, and I agree wholeheartedly, that when this woman sings, she has the uncanny ability to turn jazz into a spiritual experience. Here's a clip from one of her performances.
Night and day, you are the one. Only you beneath that moon and under the sun. Whether near you may or far, it doesn't matter, darling, where you are. I think of you night and day, day and night. Why is it so? I long to know why is it so that this longing for you follows me wherever I go, and this time it won't be through until you let me spend my life making love with you all night and all day.
In 2015, she finished as first runner-up at the Sarah Vaughan Jazz Vocal Competition. That same year, she wrote the acclaimed Jazz Alice, An Adventure in Wonderland, a musical theater production based on Lewis Carroll's classic book set to the music of John Coltrane. She performs regularly at jazz clubs and concert venues in her hometown of Kansas City, as well as around the country and internationally. The renowned jazz historian Scott Yanow listed our guest as one of the greatest jazz singers of all time in his book, The Great Jazz Singers, The Ultimate Guide. And if that weren't enough, our guest was twice chosen by the US State Department to represent the United States as a cultural jazz ambassador in 2 world tours, starting at the Kennedy Center and performing in 17 countries. I'm delighted to welcome the incomparable Angela Hagenbach to our show. Angela, thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me, and what a wonderful introduction.
Well, you deserve it. You come from a musical family. Your father was a professional saxophone player and your mother was a pianist, and you started playing the trombone at the age of 7. Who were your musical influences growing up?
Well, actually, it was my parents and my siblings growing up, because that's what I was, that's what I heard. My mother would play the piano, and we had a music room with the piano and the organ, and we'd all sort of sit around her while she played. I have many siblings between myself and my parents. My brother, one of my older brothers, he was like into Hugh Muscakila, and because he loved drumming. And then my other brother was way into Jimmy Smith, and he was an organist, and he would play. And that's kind of why it took me a while to get to jazz, because that organistic sound was more than I could handle. I love lyrics and I love storytelling, and I couldn't really hear the story in the organ the way that he was playing the music that he would play. So my musical path came through, believe it or not, funk.
Through funk?
Yes.
Wow. Well, the journey of your career has been very unusual. You started out as a top fashion model. Was it a difficult decision to leave that job and pursue a music career?
No, but it was about 7 years of overlap, because I was modeling during the day, doing photo shoots or voiceovers or even fashion shows. And then at night I'd sing and I perform with really great musicians. Kansas City is an embarrassment of riches as far as musicians go. And after a while, going into like year six, that got really difficult because I was staying up late and then had to get up early. And so I made the transition gradually. So it wasn't really that difficult. However, with the, in the fashion industry, I had all these gowns and things. So it was kind of perfect. So, I would sing at the top of the Ritz and gorgeous gowns with these fabulous musicians in their tuxedos. And I thought that was very cool in my beginning. So
Well, that's for sure.
Yeah, my first gig, steady, was at the top of the Ritz, which overlooked the plaza, and it was 4 nights a week, and that's how I started.
Well, Angela, when I listen to you sing, I get the feeling that you're transporting us to a kind of zone that's almost spiritual in its intensity. Tell me about the impact that jazz music has on you personally at an emotional level.
Well, I take a lot of inspiration, and I guess my muse is nature, if you will. And in jazz, especially where I can really get into the melodic sounds or the storytelling, it's very much like nature. The rolling hills, the trees branching, the different seasons. And so with music, I feel colors and I feel the stories when I hear the changes that the musicians are playing, and I sort of let myself go into the song, into this lyric, and I go with the flow. And to me, that's a spiritual journey, to sing from within and hope that I'm reaching people, because the front person is the conduit between the audience and the performers. And so I have to make that bridge and make that connection.
Believe me, you make it. Even though I haven't had the honor of seeing you perform live, I've seen you on video, but when I just listen, I really feel not only the colors, but the textures, the flavors, the tapestry of your voice and how you choose to interpret a song. It's really quite remarkable. Do you have any formal training?
No, vocally, no. As you stated, I played trombone and I wanted to sing, but at the time I was going to high school, you could either do band or vocals. And we already owned my trombone. So my parents said, "You're going to play that trombone." I wanted to play the acoustic bass. That was my love. And I think I like these instruments that have this deep resonant sound. But when I was introduced to the acoustic bass, I've never been little because I'm very tall, but I was small, young, and the bass was too big. Had I tried cello, then maybe I would have been a cello. I played the cello instead of the trombone. But so the trombone, I chose that as it was like my way of revolting because I was angry because I wanted to sing. I said, well, I want to play trombone. And because I had the reach, and it turned out I loved it. I loved playing the trombone. We were in the marching band, the high school band, the jazz band, stage band. It was a lot of fun. But the reason why I quit is because my embouchure was, I was starting to develop that. I was getting good at playing trombone. And so it was showing up on my photographs. And I hadn't made any money at playing the trombone, but I was making money modeling. So it fell by the wayside. So.
Before we talk about your albums, I have to tell you how impressed I am by the fact that in 1994, long before music artists took control of their own careers, you created your own recording label, Amazon Records, and you produced your own albums. You were really ahead of your time, Angela. What made you decide to do that?
Well, I just felt like I needed to do due diligence. And, I didn't have an agent or a record label. And I put out what people call an EP today, but back then it was just, my press kit, if you will. And I recorded a couple of tunes and sent it out with my press kit. And I realized, I've been gigging for a while. I think it's time for me to make a recording. And so I was teased as a youngster, they called me Amazon, which I looked it up one day. I'm like, yeah, I like that. And and so I chose Amazon Records literally 6 months before Amazon.com came on the scene. So, and I just wanted to record. I wanted to record my musicians and do some of the songs that I've been performing in the clubs, and that's why I did it. And I had I have a very good business acumen. I think if I believe in something, I go all in, and I believed in our music, so I went all in.
I think it's amazing. How do you go about selecting the songs for your albums?
Some of the songs haunt me. I just can't get them out of my head, so I choose those. I like songs with like I said, a really a deep story, a story told in few words, but melodic. I love melody. And so, and I also, my early influences for jazz, which came about in 1989, was Sarah Vaughan, of course. And then immediately it was Miles Davis. And so those two just rocked my world. And then I discovered Jobim. And so those three, vocals, instrumental, and Brazilian, shaped my desire to choose certain songs. Like, I love the way Miles Davis plays with time and melody. That just really touched me. And Sarah, her voice was so, I don't want to say silky, but creamy. And she could move and go into her deeper register. And when I first heard her, and this was literally in 1989, I knew her name, but like I said, I have all these older brothers and sisters, and by then they weren't playing jazz in the house. So she was just a name to me. But when I actually heard her, I was on the interstate, I literally had to pull over because her voice, I don't know, it felt like the heavens opened up, whoa, and I just had to listen to her. And so I went into, I went shopping and got all kinds of music by Sarah. And then I stumbled on Miles Davis Kind of Blue, which I sort of remembered from childhood, but they didn't play it enough. Yeah, and that's how it started. And then, of course, I heard Bading Powell and Chico Braque, Ivan Lins, and they sort of shaped me. They're like my musical inspiration. And from there, I hopefully developed my own sound.
Some of your albums, especially Musa Nova, feature several songs in Portuguese. What's your connection with the Portuguese language?
Nothing other than I love the music. I for some years I was a Brazil nut, still am sort of. I enjoy the culture, the food, the music, the rhythm. And I love the sound of the language. And that's basically that, there's nothing, special about it other than I just love the sound.
Your latest album, The Way They Made Me Feel, was produced by my dear friend, the brilliant George Klabin of Resonance Records. How did you end up joining forces with George?
He found me, I think, on the internet, but he contacted me out of the blue, and he just loved that album. I wish I remembered which one it was now, but he loved my rendition and my phrasing and my choice of instrumentation and solos and things. And so we struck up a friendship, and he had me out to the West Coast and did some concerts at the Vic and other places. And then he's recorded me. I had two different producers, Kuno Schmid, the pianist, and he did, I should say, arrangers. He arranged half of the album, and the other half was Tamir Hindelman. And they each had their own approach. And George selected all the tunes, except I selected Cinnamon and Clove because I love the samba. Anyway, and it was just a wonderful experience to have someone else record me other than, my company. And it was quite the experience.
Well, I think that the magic that you and George Klabin created on your latest album shows that this is a marriage made in heaven. And I really hope the two of you make a lot more albums together.
I do too. I mean, he's wonderful. He picks really great musicians and great songs, and it's all about the arrangements too. Arranging songs that fit the vocalist or the soloist is very important. Because it just elevates everything. So.
Your first album, Come Fly With Me, came out in 1994. And since then, you've released 5 more albums so far. Do you sense an emotional and spiritual evolution in your choice of material and in the quality of your voice as the years go by and with each new album?
Yeah, I do feel the growth and hear the growth. Of course, when you go back and listen, you're like, because I did that just recently because I hadn't listened to my recordings in a good while. And it was nice. I was happy to hear it. But as far as selection, let's go with the musicians for a minute. On Poetry of Love, for example, I was able to sing with, I was able to hire Clark Terry, Jimmy Heath, Russ Malone, and James Williams. And just to play with those guys, I went on the East Coast to record those albums. And it was just, I don't know, I felt a growth singing with those greats, those people that I admired for a very long time. And that was my last recording. So the first to the last, there was a huge jump, in my opinion, with my style of singing.
Yeah, I hear a depth. There's an emotional connection that keeps growing with each new album. And I think it relates to a certain comfort level you've developed as a recording artist, which is different than performing on the stage, I think.
Yes, it is. Yeah, it's very much so different.
Tell me about the 2 world tours you went on as one of America's jazz ambassadors. That must have been an amazing experience.
It really was. It was life altering, I think. It was a very rigorous application process. And you had to apply and submit a vocal demo and present your show and the type of thing that you thought you might want to give as a jazz ambassador, because we were cultural ambassadors. And so we wanted to bridge relationships between the United States and whatever country we were in through music. And so we applied, and then, people all over the United States would apply for this thing. And then we made, the first round, the second round, and then finally we were selected. The first time I set foot in Africa, it was on the eastern seaboard of Africa. It was
magical.
Yeah. I had never experienced such a feeling. And all the people there, they welcomed us with open arms, like, oh my God, the jazz artists are here. And I'm like, okay. And, there was some of the concert halls were fabulous. Others were like little villages with very spotty electricity. We would go to different universities and play with their musicians or do a master class for their music program. We do community centers. We do governmental housing and just all different kinds of venues. So I was really exposed to abject poverty and immense wealth. But we were all connected through the music. And it was really
amazing, because I think that you are an ambassador to us of jazz. And there you were, an ambassador of the United States and the musical connection that brings people together, even if their cultures are very different. I love that you did that.
Yeah, and it was just a wonderful experience. And, and then the next tour was like in India and Israel and United Emirates and places like that. So places I'd never, ever been to before, and love to go back sometime. Yeah.
Did you get to sing in Portuguese in either Portugal or Brazil?
I did in Brazil. I had a concert in Brazil. It was, oh gosh, it was a few years back, and I was only able to bring one of my musicians. So I brought Doug Allwater, who is fluent in Portuguese, Brazilian Portuguese. So he knew everybody. We had this big concert at Ilha Bela, and I was singing Berimbau. And lo and behold, everyone, and this is outside, so we're talking droves of people, and they start singing with me. Like it's like, oh my God, because they know all the lyrics, right? So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do my best and sing this song, and hopefully they understand what I'm saying. And they all sang with me. And some asked me how, when did I leave Brazil, or if I was Brazilian or something. But
That's
yeah,
a high compliment.
yes, it was exciting and thrilling. So yeah, that was a really good experience as far as cultural singing in something in their language, And
Oh,
I'm
I
not,
think that's
I don't speak Brazilian. I don't speak Portuguese. So, but
you fooled them.
I did. I can do I can speak conversationally, but
Now, as I mentioned in my introduction, you wrote a musical theater production based on Alice in Wonderland using the music of John Coltrane. What inspired that creation?
well, there's a national program called the Big Read, and the program is to encourage adults to read for pleasure, not just for learning their craft or whatever. And so the 150th anniversary of Lewis Carroll's book, The Adventures of Alice in Wonderland. So I was hired to do a program. I've done 3 of these programs, but this one I went nuts on. I've done one for the Maltese Falcon, and I did one for Great Gatsby. And they were big read programs. So I wanted to do something a little bit different for the Alice in Wonderland. And at the time, I was really living in the music of John Coltrane. And so I'm like, I talked myself into this gig. She says, well, what would you do with it? I said, well, I'd probably set it to, some music, and we can tell that story and get people interested in listening to the music as well as the literature and blah, blah, blah. And so when I got home, I was like, what have I done? And so I just put Coltrane on, and all of a sudden it worked because Lewis Carroll is a mathematician. He was a mathematician. And so his storytelling is rhythmic. And it was set in 1865. And the music I love of Coltrane was 64 and 65 and 69. And I thought, let me see if I can make this work. And so one song led to another. And I said, well, let me see if I can keep going. And all of a sudden, I had the entire story. Of course, not the entire story, but the ones that are the most iconic that people remember. And, Lewis Carroll has this international club, and there's all these people go and do things all over the world for this author. And so I thought, well, this will be a great opportunity to merge some of those, literature lovers with jazz. And then my character, not my character, but the character Jazz Alice, I see someone like Tawanda playing her on stage. She was a jazz studies student studying Coltrane, and she falls asleep. And the rabbit and all these things happen while she's, experiencing all of these Coltrane tunes and all those modal harmonies. And anyway, so that was the thinking behind that. And I actually did a production. We had dancers. My rabbit was a tap dancer and trumpeter, and it was just so much fun. I loved it. And I wasn't able to release it because I didn't have permission from their Coltrane family, but I think it has such potential.
Yeah, I hope that happens. Now,
I do too.
do you see the irony of you having been a top fashion model, which is kind of like going through the looking glass, and doing
Yes.
Alice in Wonderland? That's not lost on you?
No. But I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. That's very interesting that you picked that up.
Yeah, I want to see this production, and I think the Coltrane family has to get with the program because you were the perfect person, not because of your musical talent, that's obvious, and your writing talent, but because you really did go through the looking glass into Wonderland. At least the public perception of what you did is very much like Alice.
Yes, absolutely.
So I think you're a perfect match. That is destiny waiting to happen.
And I can see these pieces, these songs as like animated shorts, like a little short animation with one of the Coltrane songs with the little cartoon people doing all this stuff. And it could really bring about a whole new audience.
Appreciation, a new appreciation for Alice in Wonderland.
Yes, and for jazz.
And for jazz. Now, in addition to being a great singer and performer, you're also a very gifted songwriter. Two of your compositions are featured in Last Will, a movie starring Tatum O'Neal, James Brolin, and Tom Berenger. And you appeared in the movie as the wedding singer. Was that an enjoyable experience for you?
It really was. It was so much fun, especially because they used my name. Because we were outside the setting, the scene that I was in. It was a wedding that took place outside in this lovely area here in Kansas City. And Tom Berenger and all the stars, they were mingling at this wedding party, right? And then so the MC came up and made the toast. No, it was not the MC, the father, the bride, or somebody. And now, ladies and gentlemen, Angela Hagenbach. And they actually said that in the film. I'm like, okay. I just thought I'd be in the background somewhere. And so they, zoomed in and and we were singing, and he said my name, and my name was in the credits, which was great, because a lot of times when you're like an extra in a movie, they don't say your name. You just, so that was really cool. And the fact that two of my pieces were in the film and they showed me performing both of them, which was awesome.
Yeah, you're so amazingly versatile. And one of the most fascinating things about you, aside from the fact you were a fashion model, you're a businesswoman, you're an incredible performer, recording artist, you founded the Black Ancestors Awareness Campaign, which is part of the Weston Historical Museum, designed to increase the visibility of the heritage of Weston's Black community. And you've written a historical fiction manuscript about your maternal ancestors' arrival in Missouri in the late 1830s as slaves, correct?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm writing it. It's not complete yet. It's actually a historical fiction, and it's plotted out as a trilogy. And that's how all of my research started, or this work that I'm doing in Weston started, because I found out that my mother's people came to Missouri by way of Weston, and they were enslaved. One bought her freedom in 59 and her families as well. And then she bought this property. And both of my great grandmothers were property owners and just did these wonderful things. And so it's a true, to bring it to today's time, they had true Black girl magic.
Well, this project, which is called Folks of Weston, I can see that as a musical.
Oh my, yes. Well, I'm writing it. In my mind, it's an audio book that could very well be episodic, like HBO or something like that. I never thought of it as a musical, but that's a great idea.
Well, it could first be a miniseries on Netflix or HBO, and then something tells me with your musical talent, you're going to find a way to inject music into that. I just know it.
That's a great idea.
I want to tell our viewers that you can learn more about the Black Ancestors Awareness Campaign by going to the official website of the Weston Historical Museum, westonhistoricalmuseum.org. And you can learn more about Angela Hagenbach, buy her albums, and see her concert schedule by going to her official website, angelahagenbach.co. Well, Angela, I've really enjoyed sharing my platform with you because I want everyone to know who you are and to become familiar with your amazing gifts. Thank you so much for taking the time to appear on our show.
Well, thank you. It's been my pleasure.
Our guest has been the mega talented jazz vocalist Angela Hagenbach. My name is Harvey Brownstone. Thank you to our producer, Steve Silver, my wonderful managers, Rick and Robin at the Marcelli Company in Hollywood, and my entire team at XPTV1 in the UK. A big, big thank you to my dear friend, George Klabin of Resonance Records, who brought Angela to my attention. I'm now a huge fan. Thank you all for joining us. See you next time.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to check out all the great interviews on the Harvey Brownstone Interviews YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified when new videos are posted.